Dear congregation, most of us skim alerts and miss the one report that actually closes doors. We glance, we nod, we move on, and the adversary keeps walking our halls. Your threat analytics isn't useless. It's unused. That neglect keeps dwell time long and incidents recurring. Here's what actually matters. We read the reports like orders. We tie them to incidents and secure score. And we act today. We'll expose the blind spots, show the path, and give you measures to reduce time to detect and close attack paths. Hold one pattern in your heart as we walk. Read, test, act, verify. What threat analytics really is and isn't. Beloved brothers and sisters in the cloud, let us define the sanctuary before we pray within it. Threat analytics is in product research, written by Microsoft's own security researchers. It brings global signal but speaks in our tenants' language. It maps to MITRE ATT&CK so we see tactics, techniques, and procedures with clarity. It names indicators of compromise so we can hunt. And it offers recommendations that become deeds, not decorations. Here's what actually happens when we open a report with reverence. We see the overview, a plain account of the actor, the campaign, or the technique. Then we descend into technical analysis. We meet the TTPs, we meet the tools, we meet the paths they favor. The narrative is not a headline, it is a map. But here's where it gets interesting. The report is not just story. It is context stitched to our house. It checks our exposure. It tells us if the pattern is present here. It surfaces device and account evidence when defender has seen kindred behavior. This is wisdom joined to community. Now the covenant. Read, test, act, verify. This is our weekly liturgy. We read the overview in the MITRE section to understand intent and method. We test by pulling IOCs and TTPs into hunting. We act by converting recommendations into secure score actions and incident tasks. We verify by rerunning queries and checking exposure status until the shield holds. Simple words, strong vows. Who writes it matters. Microsoft researchers sit with global telemetry and live incidents. They see what breaks, they see what holds. Their prioritization is not guesswork, it is battle testimony. So when a recommendation is listed, we treat it as an order bound to a control, not as advice, as duty. And yet, threat analytics is not a newsfeed, not a CVE dump, not a substitute for incidents or secure score. It is the thread that ties them. The report tells the story and the techniques. Incidents hold the evidence and the scope. Secure score names the controls and the gaps. Together, they form a single hymn of defense. Most people think the overview is the point. But the real secret sits lower. Two sections change our work today. First, the MITRE mapping, where techniques are named in plain code we can chase. Second, the organization-specific exposure and protections view. That quiet panel asks, is this present here? Are protections enabled here? That is the section most skip. That is the missed door we were meant to close. Let me show you the cadence we keep. We select an active report tied to an actor, a campaign, or a widespread technique. We read top to bottom, but we pause at MITRE. We list the techniques. We list the artifacts. We carry those into hunting across the last 14 to 30 days. We join what we find to open incidents. We enrich those incidents with actor context from the report so the triage tells truth. Then we take each recommendation and bind it to a secure score action, an owner, and a deadline. Now this is important because time is our enemy. Threat analytics shortens time to detect when we treat its guidance as a playbook. It closes attack paths when we translate narrative to control. It teaches our teams a shared language. Technique to query, query to incident, incident to control, control to verification. That circle is the covenant. But remember this truth. The report will not walk for us. It will point, it will warn, it will measure. We must move. So when we open threat analytics this week, we do not skim, we do not copy and file. We read, we test, we act, we verify, and we return like faithful stewards to check the doors we have shut. The 3 oversights that make it useless. Dear congregation, let us confess the 3 oversights that turn a living report into a quiet newsletter. We do not confess to wallow, we confess to change. Oversight 1. We skim the overview and skip the MITRE mapping and affected exposure. We read the headline. We nod at the summary. We never descend into the techniques. We never ask which tactics were used. We never mark which techniques we can actually hunt. And then we miss the small panel that speaks to our house. It says, seen here, or protected here, or at risk here. We scroll past that whisper. We lose days. Why this matters? Techniques are our Rosetta Stone. Without them, we chase noise. With them, we write queries that bind directly to behavior. Exposure tells us if the behavior is at our door. When we skip both, we break the chain. We cannot test. We cannot verify. We are left with story and no sword. The remedy is simple. Map, then measure. Take the listed techniques. Label them with their AT&CK codes. T-N-59, T-155, T-5147. Build a small ledger for each technique. Note whether Defender already detects it. Note whether your environment shows exposure. If the exposure panel says applicable, that is today's work order. If it says protected, rerun a quick hunt to confirm the shield holds. We do not guess, we check. Oversight 2. We treat recommendations as suggestions, not change requests tied to controls. We read enable conditional access when we read turn on device tamper protection. We say good idea, and we move on. But recommendations are not ideas. They are controls in plain dress. They map to secure score. They map to policy. They map to owners. Why this matters? A recommendation without an owner is a wish. A control without a deadline is a hope. Hopes do not close doors. Orders do. So we take each recommendation and bind it to a secure score action. We attach an owner. We set an SLA. We gather evidence of effectiveness. Screenshot the setting. Export the policy. Link the incident that proved the need. Now the recommendation has a spine. It will stand. The remedy again follows the covenant. Read the recommendation. Translate it to a control name you recognize in Secure Score. Assign it in your tracker. Schedule verification. When the setting lands, re-hunt the technique from the MITRE list. If the detection goes quiet and prevention logs show blocks, record that outcome. That is proof. That is grace earned through work. Oversight 3. We ignore the tenant-specific signals and the device and account evidence. The report tells us when a pattern appears in our walls. It highlights devices touched by a similar behavior. It flags accounts with related anomalies. And yet we stay abstract. We say interesting trend. We do not click into the evidence. We do not join it to incidents. We do not call the owners of those devices. And days pass. Why this matters? Intelligence without localization is weather on a distant shore. Tenant signals bring the storm to our map. Device and account evidence turn forecasts into coordinates. That is where we set sail. That is where we act. The remedy is to verify. Open the tenant impact view. If it reports related activity, pivot into those devices and users. Check their incident timelines. Confirm whether the activity was resolved, suppressed, or ignored. If ignored, raise an incident now. Enrich it with the actor and TTP context from the report so the narrative explains the urgency. Then bind remediation to controls as in Oversight 2. We make the loop complete. And there is a thread that stitches all 3 remedies. The real secret is the link between report insights, incidents, and secure score controls. Insight becomes incident. Incident becomes control. Control is verified against the same insight. This is order. This is our liturgy. Once we accept our neglect, we can walk the corrective path. We will choose a live report. We will extract techniques. We will hunt, assign, and verify. Brothers and sisters, our tools already speak. Let us listen. Then move. The corrective path. Turn reports into action within 1 hour. Dear congregation, let us walk the hour. 60 minutes of ordered steps. No panic, no drift. Just covenant and craft. Step 1. Choose a current, active report with organizational impact. We do not chase novelty. We choose relevance, an actor known to touch our sector, a campaign observed in our region, a technique that crosses many doors. Open the report. Note the publish date. Note the last updated line. Fresh bread feeds better. Step 2. Read top to bottom, but stop with purpose at the MITRE section. This is the spine. List the tactics, list the techniques by their codes and names. T1059 command and scripting interpreter. T1104 email collection. TU55 use of stolen tokens. 3 to 5 is enough for the hour. Copy the technique descriptions. Note any tool names called out. These will guide our queries. But here's where it gets interesting. The report often provides sample detections, artifacts, or known behaviors. Extract the required detections implied by each technique. For TU155, we expect token replay patterns. For T1059, script interpreter process trees. For T1114, suspicious mailbox access. Write one sentence for each. What would prove this technique happened here? That is our test. Step 3. Pull IOCs and TTPs into defender hunting or advanced hunting. Start with TTPs. They endure longer than single indicators. In advanced hunting, select last 14 to 30 days. Choose based on your dwell time reality. Use device process events for interpreter pivots. Use identity logon events and cloud app events for token and auth traces. Use email events for collection patterns. Create focused queries for each technique using the artifacts named in the report. Not everything, only what maps to the TTP list. Now we add speed. Save each query with the technique code in the name. T155 token replay probe. T1059 interpreter spawn probe. T1144 mailbox access probe. Run them. Sort by severity and recency. Export the results to a working sheet. This is our field list for the next steps. Step 4. Link findings to active incidents. For each hit, pivot to the device or account and open its incident timeline. If there is an existing incident, join our evidence to it. Add a note. Correlated to threat analytics, report title, technique, code. If there is no incident, open one now. Title it with the actor or technique named in the report. Enrich the summary with 2 lines of context from the report. We do this so triage sees the why, not only the what. This turns isolated alerts into a story with direction. And yet, we remain grounded. We verify scope. Are multiple devices showing the pattern? Are multiple users affected? If 2 or more endpoints or identities share the same TTP within the window, elevate priority. That is not noise. That is a path. Step 5. Convert recommendations into secure score actions and device or user tasks. Open the recommendations section of the report. For each item, find its mirror in secure score. Conditional access hardening. OAuth app consent policies. Tamper protection. Attack surface reduction rules. Create an action entry with the secure score control name, the owner, and the SLA. For device or user specifics discovered in Step 4, add concrete tasks. Revoke sessions for named users. Block legacy protocols on named devices. Reset credentials. Remove risky OAuth apps by ID. We bind strategy to stewardship. Now this is important because a recommendation without evidence can stall. So attach evidence, paste the query name, attach the exported hits, link the incident ID. This is how we move a meeting. We show the door, we show the draft, we show the wind. Step 6. Validate protections. Return to the report's exposure and protections panel. Does it say applicable here for any element? Treat those as must verify controls. In Defender and Entra, check the actual policy status. For device protections, spot check the affected endpoints. Is tamper protection on? Are ASR rules enforced? For identity, confirm conditional access conditions for risky sign-ins and token lifetimes. When controls are set, rerun the saved hunting queries. We expect fewer hits, different patterns, or explicit block events. If the pattern persists unchanged, we misapplied the control or targeted the wrong gap. Adjust and test again. The loop must close. Close the loop with documentation. Create a brief record. Report name, techniques targeted, queries used, incidents touched, controls enacted, verification outcome. 1 page, plain words. Store it where the team prays together. Your runbook, your wiki, your digital sanctuary of memory. Set the review cadence now. Daily we glance at saved queries for new hits. Weekly we open threat analytics and repeat the hour for a new or updated report. Monthly we verify that secure score actions tied to past recommendations remain in force. We turn practice into rhythm, rhythm into culture. Measure 2 vows, time to detect from first indicator to analyst view. Named attack paths closed by technique with date and control. Add these to your dashboard. Incident timelines for speed. Secure score history for control coverage. Report specific exposure for today's posture. When metrics stall, return to the report. Reassess TTP coverage. Enrich queries. Renew the covenant. Beloved brothers and sisters in the cloud, the hour is enough when we walk it with order. Choose the report. Extract the techniques. Hunt the truth. Bind findings to incidents. Translate guidance to controls. Verify with fresh eyes. Document, review, measure. This is how threat analytics becomes a shield, not a story. This is how we reduce time to detect. This is how we close named paths. Let us walk. Detection gaps. 2 live scenarios to expose weakness. Dear congregation, now we test our God in the wild. 2 live paths. 2 mirrors for our readiness. We will not dramatize. We will examine. We will act. Scenario A. Phishing to token theft. The adversary does not need your password when they can borrow your session. The TTP focus is consent abuse and token replay. The pattern begins with a crafted email that lures a user to a malicious OAuth consent screen. It asks for read mail. It asks for offline access. So the user accepts. A service principal gains long-lived reach, or the attacker captures a token through a web proxy and replays it. The doors open without a knock. Let us hunt as the report teaches. Use the guidance to search sign-in anomalies and OAuth abuse. In identity logon events, filter for successful sign-ins from unfamiliar sign-in properties within minutes of a phishing alert. In cloud app events, query for new OAuth app consents with broad scopes, especially offline access and mail. Read granted by non-admin accounts. Pivot to app consent grant events. Look for service principals created near the time of consent. Verify the device and account scope. Do the same 2 or 3 users appear across the last 14 days? Do we see token lifetimes without corresponding MFA prompts? If yes, the pattern breathes here. Where gaps appear, they are often plain. Missing conditional access controls that demand re-authentication for risky sign-ins. Stale app consents that grant legacy access to dormant applications. Weak session defenses that allow token use beyond expected boundaries. This is important because consent once granted becomes a quiet river. It flows until we place a gate. So we confirm policy. In Entra, inspect conditional access for sign-in risk, device compliance, and session controls. Require re-authentication for risky sessions. Enforce continuous access evaluation where applicable. Review enterprise applications. List consents by scope and age. Revoke questionable grants, disable user consent except vetted scenarios, then rerun the queries. If OAuth abuse goes silent and we see explicit blocks, we have tightened the path. If we still see unusual token reuse, rotate secrets, revoke refresh tokens for named users, and audit app credentials. We do not guess. We reset. Scenario B, living off the land persistence. The adversary avoids their own tools, they borrow ours. The TTP focus is script interpreters and abused binaries. They launch PowerShell with encoded commands. They use WScript, CScript, MSHTA, Regis VR32, or Rundle L32 to stage payloads. They schedule tasks. They plant registry-run keys. They live in the seams. We use the report's MITRE mapping to query process trees. In device process events, hunt for parent-child chains where Office or a browser spawns an interpreter. Flag command lines with base 64 hidden windows or outbound web calls. Search for regs VR32 loading remote scriptlets. Hunt for MSHTA invoking HTTP URLs. In persistence artifacts, review scheduled tasks, events for newly created tasks under user context with odd names. In registry activity, check run and run once keys altered by non-installer processes. Confirm prevention and remediation settings. Are attack surface reduction rules in force? Is tamper protection enabled? Are PowerShell logs in deep script block mode? Where gaps appear, they are predictable. Allow lists that bless legacy interpreters without monitoring. Unmonitored endpoints where sensor health is poor. Incomplete hardening where ASR rules are in audit, not block. And yet we do not despair. We turn recommendation into order. Enable ASR for blocking Office from creating child processes and for blocking executable content from email and web clients. Turn on controlled folder access if appropriate. Enforce tamper protection across the fleet. Require script block logging. Then test again. Launch a benign interpreter chain in a lab and confirm block events fire. In production data, we expect fewer suspicious parent-child pairs and more preventive outcomes. Now verify scope and ownership. If the same abused binary appears across multiple devices, that is a named path. Assign an owner to close it, remove the legacy tool, replace the workflow, or add a signed alternative. If a single device repeats suspicious chains, treat it as a patient source. Rebuild or re-image if needed. It is better to cleanse than to nurse a wound. Tie both scenarios back to incidents. For token theft findings, create or enrich an identity incident titled with the technique. Attach Cloud App Events evidence, consent IDs, and usernames. For living off the land hits, enrich endpoint incidents with the exact process tree and command line. Add a note binding each to the threat analytics report and its techniques. This gives analysts the why and the how in one place. Finally, bind controls to secure score and measure change. For scenario A, map to conditional access, app consent policies, and session governance. For scenario B, map to ASR rules, tamper protection, and logging. Set SLAs, attach evidence, rerun the saved probes daily for a week. If hits decline and blocks rise, record the date the path closed. If not, return to the report. We missed a turn. Adjust and verify. This is how we keep our covenant. Measurement and governance. Prove value in days, not months. Dear congregation, measurement is our witness. Governance is our vow. Without them, our work fades like smoke. With them, our shield gains weight and proof. Let us define two vows. Reduce time to detect. Close named attack paths. We speak them aloud so our teams can carry them. We post them where we gather. We review them each week. Time to detect is simple to state, hard to live. Measure from first indicator seen by defender to analyst, eyes on an incident with context, not alert creation. Analyst eyes, context present, that is the clock. Use incident timelines, mark the earliest related alert, mark the analyst's first action. Subtract, record daily, chart weekly. When the line does not fall, we change something that day. Named attack paths are concrete by technique and control. T1.5 token replay closed by conditional access enforcement on this date. T1059 interpreter abuse closed by ASR block on this date. Maintain a ledger. Count open paths, count closed paths. Track the age of open ones. No abstractions, only named doors and their locks. Now dashboards. We keep 3 in our sanctuary. Incident timelines for speed. This is where time to detect breathes. secure score history for control coverage, not as vanity but as evidence of controls actually landing, and report-specific exposure status tied to the threat analytics reports we worked this month. If exposure returns to applicable, that is a bell. We answer. Cadence creates culture, daily a brief, 10 minutes, review fresh incidents with the saved probes from our hour. Name the 2 slowest detections. Name 1 action to shorten them today. Weekly a threat analytics review. Choose 1 active report. Walk the hour. Update the ledger. Monthly control verification. Spot check 10 endpoints and 5 identities against the controls we claimed. Screenshots. Policy exports. Block events. Prayer without words. Accountability turns recommendation into order. For each recommendation converted, assign an owner. Attach the SLA, capture evidence of effectiveness, a screenshot of the setting, a query result before and after, the incident ID linked. Hold a short covenant check each week. Did we meet the SLA? If not, what blocked us? Remove the obstacle or escalate. Escalation is not anger, it is stewardship. When metrics stall, we return to the report that began the work. We reassess TTP coverage. Did our queries truly reflect the techniques? We enrich them, add related artifacts from the report's changelog, widen the time window if Dwell suggests it. Test again. If exposure remains applicable, audit control deployment. Are ASR rules in block or audit? Is conditional access applied to the right users and apps? Correct. Verify. Re-measure. Beloved brothers and sisters in the cloud, this is governance with grace. Clear vows, simple measures, frequent proof. We do not wait for quarters. We show value in days. We show progress in weeks. We engrave change in months. Let us stand guard with numbers that speak. Let us keep our covenant, the vow and the next step. Dear congregation, let us speak one truth plainly. When we read, test, act, and verify, threat analytics stops being a newsletter and becomes a shield we can lift today. So we make a vow. We will not skim. We will not delay. We will not separate insight from action. We bind them. We walk the hour. We measure the vows. This is our covenant. Each week, we choose 1 living report. We extract its techniques. We hunt our house. We join our findings to incidents. We translate guidance into controls with owners and deadlines. We verify, we document, we measure time to detect and count closed paths by name. Then we do it again. And yet we keep humility. We know the adversary adapts. We answer by renewing our rhythm. We keep our saved probes warm. We revisit controls to confirm block, not audit. We watch exposure panels like sentinels at dusk. If a bell rings, we rise. Brothers and sisters in the cloud, the path is not complicated. It is faithful. Read with intent, test with precision, act with ownership, verify with evidence. That circle holds. If this teaching served you, subscribe and stay with us. Our next message walks the same path across privilege escalation and lateral movement, naming the exact techniques to hunt and the controls to close them. Let us walk its pathways with humility. This is our covenant in the cloud.